Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We are back with Season 6, Episode 49 of our weekly P&Q&C&A&T videos, which is a lot of letters that basically means we're going to take some comments, we're going to talk about them in whatever way we want, and if you're on the video and you want to listen to this in the podcast format, you can check out the links in the description to check this out on all the major podcasting platforms.
And we might even answer some questions.
That's true, if the feeling strikes us. So, I think that's everything we need to say about that before we get into it. The first question comes from
A new patron.
Who we're going to have to try extra hard to figure out how to pronounce the name of, because we definitely need to do it. So it's Mohammed Albshaiti.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah,
how
definitely
close
let
we
us
are.
know, because you are paying us money, and the least we can learn how to do is pronounce your name correctly.
Yes.
So this was a message on Patreon, and they say, "Hello, I find it annoying that Injustice hasn't been updated for almost a year now. They're losing their fan base. I don't think they realize how important Injustice really is. What are your thoughts on this?" And then we also have sort of a corollary comment from Red Lightning, :3.
Is that a butt smile?
I think it's just a smile. I don't know if
okay.
it needs to be a butt smile.
I don't know. Isn't the 3 supposed to be like a butt emoji or
I
something?
don't think so. I think we've moved past that, and
Okay.
ASCII
So
characters aren't emojis.
It's
for
like
sure.
a peach?
Well, the peach is the butt now, yeah, but I don't think you've brought a button to it. I don't think Red Lightning. I don't think that was the initial intention
Okay.
of the username. But anyways, Red Lightning says, "I really wish Injustice would start getting updated again, like actually add new characters and stuff. I don't really like Injustice 2. BDCKR, it's okay if you don't answer, but I would really like it if you did. So my question is, do you think Injustice will ever start updating again?"
Yeah, so they're definitely related questions. I think Mohammed makes more than a couple of interesting points. I think definitely there's a fan base, and I think that fan base has been bleeding out pretty consistently for a while now. Even when there were updates, we're pretty late in the life cycle of a mobile game that's not Candy Crush.
Yeah, and there have been really enduring mobile games, but most of them have true online in a more meaningful sense. Where there's either online, like symmetric online play, where there's two people playing at once, or in games like Clash of Clans, you have a much more active and involved online component that involves actually building community on the apps, right?
Right.
So everything that I've seen that has sort of survived this long has some sort of social online component.
Yeah,
that online.
Definitely, that's very important.
Yeah.
Because the social component of Injustice really was the forums.
Yeah.
I mean, when you fight somebody, if you don't get to talk to them in any way at all, like not even like, what was that game, that Club Penguin game?
Yeah.
Where you used to be able to interact with people, but you get preset statements that you can use.
I don't think
right?
you just got preset statements. I think the preset statements was for like the child mode.
Oh,
where you couldn't
okay.
say stuff, and then I don't remember though.
So what's funny is when I was in high school, they computerized the report cards, and the teachers had options. They had a slew of choices that they could pick.
Yeah.
So because I'd done
Like
particularly
the fill in
well,
the blanks.
yes, well, sort of, but they're just statements that you could pull like whole cloth and just drop them in.
Yeah.
So I was doing well enough, and it was a geography course. It was grade 13. This was back in the day when school went up to grade 13, and well, it actually was just after they dropped grade 13. They called it OAC instead. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember what that stands for.
You're allowed to write your own report card comments?
My geography teacher said, "Okay, you've done so well. I will let you pick from this list which report card comment."
I got to do that too.
Okay, the one I picked was forgets to bring his crayons to class. That was an option.
You forgot that for yourself?
I picked that for myself.
You picked that for yourself? That's funny.
Yeah, it was funny that it was even available, and now I have proof that was one of the options that teachers could choose about their high school students.
In the summer of grade 9, so I guess in between grade 9 and 10, grade 9.5, if we're using our nomenclature for gear.
Yeah, okay.
Grade 9 becoming grade 10, I took civics and careers early because it was a required course, and a lot of people did that. It was useless. I don't know why I did it, and summer school is pretty soul-crushing.
It is.
So it was not a positive experience overall, because, like, you're not, like, I don't know why. It's not like I was even going for, like, I wasn't a super high achiever in high school, so it wasn't like I was going for like the 90 plus and everything.
Right.
And so I was looking to like focus on it and get the easy mark in civics and careers. I was just cruising by, and like, it's grade 10, so nobody cares about setting yourself up for the future.
This is true.
It literally mattered not at all.
And it's not like we pushed you.
No, you didn't. I did it on my own volition because I was with a bunch of other nerds, and all of them, a bunch of nerds with strict parents, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you got to do summer school. You got to do it."
Oh, and that kid who did summer camp that was math camp. It was just his dad giving him.
Oh yeah,
math
where he said he went to math camp over the summer, and it was 3 hours of math worksheets in his kitchen every day. Yeah. Anyway, no, but so yeah. I got bamboozled into doing summer school, but I did actually have a great teacher. My civics teacher was really, really nice.
Right.
And so he let me pick my report card stuff because he's like, oh yeah, there's barely any options. It doesn't actually mean anything anyways. Right? Like we have so little. We can basically just say positive things or negative things. And then we can say at the end, like the room for improvement thing where it's either like something big room for improvement or there's some stuff which is like, continue their current work. Right. So I don't remember if I was able to actually pick like... As a final thing, I definitely remember I got walked through the process and shown what all the options were on my report card. Right. So,
Okay. I have a summer school story. So I took summer school once, too. So, I mean, 1 year I actually was a teacher's assistant, like later on when I was old enough to get a summer job. Yeah. But 1 year I actually took computers because... So my funny thing was that in high school, I ended up transferring in the middle of high school. Well, early on in high school. So the way... You know how there's certain minimum credits that you need? And each school has their own setup a little bit. So if there's like one credit that's required, that's the year you do it. And they happen to flip. So there's certain credits that I needed to take. So I ended up doing summer school to get caught up. And I don't even know why I needed it. It was something to do with math, but I took computer science. And, okay, so this is how old I was. Or I am. This is how long ago it was. I took computer science. I am totally dating myself. The computer course was in Fortran, and we did it on computer cards. So we'd have to take the cards, you'd have to plan it out, you'd have to keep it in order. Dinosaur. Yeah, and then you would mark off in pencil what you wanted each thing to say, and you would feed it into the machine, and then it would do its thing.
Very applicable in today's world.
Right, and that's not even the entire story. The reason why I even remember that is because there was somebody in the class, she was much older than everybody else, but she was taking it, I guess, as a mature student, and she needed a lot of help. So, listen... There was nothing else to do. It was pretty boring. It was relatively like basic. So I helped her out. So at the end of the year, she gave me a homemade jar of there's this jam. I can't remember.
The longer that you held on homemade jar without telling me what was in it,
homemade jar of jam,
increasingly apprehensive.
But I can't remember. It was some sort of not like a standard kind of jam. I mean, but it's not uncommon. I can't even remember what it was. And she also gave me a check for $5. As like a token, and at the time it was a big deal because like $5 was
a lot of comic books.
Well, it was, and it's not like it's not like there was some sort of understanding and saying, okay, so if you help me out, I'll give you this. This is like a tutoring. Yeah. It was just helping out for nothing. So it was like a nice surprise at the end of it. So I actually had a pretty positive summer school experience, even though I agree with you, like taking a course in summer is kind of soul crushing,
especially when it's the same course every day. And, like, the in-between courses, like, they know how bad it is because they give you 15-minute breaks where you just stand out in the hallway for 15 minutes.
Right.
Right? Because you know how... Because it's not... Like, it's high school, right? You're allowed to go to the washroom in class. It's not like a washroom break, right? It's not like prison wardens.
So what I would do is I can't even remember whether it was this school, summer school, or whether it was, like, Saturday language school. But I remember during those breaks at strange high schools, I would sneak into their library and borrow some of their books and read them.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's how I read Flowers for Algernon. It was like one of the library books. I remember that very distinctly because I thought, how lucky are they that they have such a good selection of books?
See, I'm going to segue to a computer science story.
Okay, all right.
We're talking about that. We're not answering the question at all.
We will
get back to it eventually. Yeah. But in high school, I took computer science, and I generally enjoyed the class. Right. See, I feel like I talk more about the bad teachers that I've had than the good teachers.
You do, actually. I think you do.
Because they're more interesting. Saying you had a great teacher, there's not a story there, right?
There can be.
There can be. I've had some wonderful teachers. The vast majority of my teachers have been really good. But this teacher that I had was another one of the ones who was not so good. He at one point had me pull... I don't know if I've told you this before. At one point, I forget... There was like a school shooter or a bomber or something. I think there was a domestic terrorist, and he said they released photos of him as a kid, and he kind of looks like you. And I was on my computer, I was coding, and he had me pull up the pictures of this like terrorist as a kid, and was like, "Doesn't he sort of look like you?" And I'm like, "I don't know, I guess so."
Oh
like
my God.
so he was, when I say bad, I'm not talking about bad at teaching. I'm talking about
Bad at
like,
humaning?
he put a kick me sign on one kid's back at some point. I was not in the class when he did it. No, that part's a funny story because they sort of had a standoff. Because he put a kick me sign on his back, and the kid totally flew off the handle and screamed at him and cussed him out. And at the end of it, they both were just sort of angry and upset at the other person and could do absolutely nothing because they're both,
Well, the teacher is the instigator, right?
The teacher is the instigator, but they both sort of left it. So when I say bad teacher, I mean he was like
he was a bad human.
I don't know if I would go that far. People liked him. Some people liked him.
Some people like Trump.
He dressed up as Trump for Halloween.
Oh, did he?
He did.
Oh my God! So, I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah. And so I like a good friend in that class who I still keep in touch with. I think this was like grade 10 or 11 maybe.
Okay.
Was really proficient at coding.
Right.
And was always like a month ahead of us.
Right.
And so there was a lesson component of each class, which was about half an hour worth, or 45 minutes,
Okay.
of him just scrolling through a PDF
Okay.
that he had made like 10 years ago. And it always started out with attendance, so he would bring people to the center and he would make attendance last really long. Like he would tell people about what his kids did over the weekend, about stuff that he did. He would be like, does anybody know any like good Chinese places nearby? Like it would be a whole thing, he would just basically like talk with us.
Right.
And so that was great for people who didn't show up to class and didn't really care, right? Because, he gave us enough time to do what we needed for coding. At one point, I had a bug in my code. I asked him to help me troubleshoot it, and he said, okay, I'll tell you, but you had to listen to the story first. and I said to him, like, can you do this first and then tell me the story?
Because you'll have my undivided... I can actually pay attention.
And he said no. And I was like, so I had to listen to the story. And he's like, yeah, it's required. And then he told me the story. And then he couldn't figure out the bug in the code. And then the person who sat next to me, who I'm talking about, fixed it for me. Because he's like, oh, I don't really do this. I don't work in Java this way a lot.
So what you're saying is your teacher owed you a time where when you started telling a story, you could just tune out and shut down.
Well, he would tell stories to the class, but he never told me a personal story again. You're right, I probably could have used that. I mean, he had some sense of fairness. I'm sure if I had another time that he wanted to tell me a story first, I could have invoked that. But like he genuinely, and it was like not an appropriate story. I don't remember exactly what it was. I do remember that part of it included that there was a running joke in his family that the men in his family would leave their wives and marry red-headed secretaries.
Oh my God.
Like that was a component of the story. But anyway, so the point is he would make,
haha, marriage infidelity is always such a funny thing.
I don't know if there's any direct infidelity implied. I think it would just they would leave their wives and then eventually get together with their secretaries. The implication is definitely different from the explicit content of the story.
Okay.
But he would have us sit in the front and he would just talk and he would go through people's names and he would just like riff and try to find new nicknames for people as he would go through the attendance. And
like Michael Scott.
Yeah.
In The Office.
In a lot of ways he was like Michael Scott. But just not well, some people like being in a classroom environment with him, so I guess it's different people's responses to Michael Scott too.
Yes.
But so that was great for anybody who didn't want to do any work in the class, and it sucked for my friend who wanted to code, was about a month ahead, and so we would get on the computer and he would start coding right away, and then our teacher would be like, can you come to the center of the room? And my friend would go, I've already done this lesson, I'm about a month ahead, can I is it okay if I just code? And he's like, no, you got to come to the center, right? Where you got to.
Can I do the work for this class?
Yeah,
am I allowed to?
Am I allowed to be productive? Am I allowed to code in this coding class? And he would go, no, you got to come to the center, right? I got to teach the lesson, make sure you understand it right or whatever. He would never give a great explanation. He just said basically, no, I said so. You got to come to the center. And then he would launch into his 20-minute attendance spiel, and my friend would just be pounding his head on the desk, not literally, but he would be so frustrated. And so he was just mad that entire semester, just because it was 75 minutes of class and you could have gotten a lot of good stuff done. Right. And I learned more from my friend than I did from my teacher in that case.
Was that the one that helped you out fix your bug?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Same person throughout all of it.
Yeah.
So there we go. That's my computer science story, which is a lot less positive than yours.
Yeah, that's true.
I would say a little bit more entertaining, maybe.
I still can't remember what that fruit was. It's like it's almost like an orange kind of thing. It's used in, it's going to bug me until I look it up. Is there a fruit jam that begins with C?
Clementine?
No, it's not that.
Cranberry?
Okay.
No.
So let me get back to the original question. So,
Injustice. We're talking about whether or not we think Injustice is getting any updates.
Yeah. And the way Mohammed phrased it was, I don't think they realize how important Justice really is. And I guess probably more than anybody else, for themselves, they probably realize how important it is. And to them, it's not important at all, except maybe as a revenue generator, right?
Like, that's a sad way of thinking about it. But
well, no, it's all a matter of perspective, right? For us, it's important because this is probably the most important mobile game, only because without this mobile game, this channel would not exist as it is now.
For us, this is, I think, the most important video game.
Ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just personally.
Yeah, I mean, think of all the things that have stemmed from that, right? Like, I mean, I'm reminded of that now where, I should mention, speaking of things, I mean, at one point we were doing unboxings, and we used to recommend stuff at the end of it. One thing I do want to point out and recommend is that Canon Grawl, who is the artist and author of Max Over Axe, which was an online comic book, or comic strip.
Webcomic is
what the
youth are saying.
Is what the youths are saying. Okay, so he's had a tough time of it lately. So in the last couple of years, he stopped making his comic because he had a brain tumor, and he's been recovering, and he's finally getting back around to not only putting together a second book, a collection of his online strips. He's also making plans in the near future of continuing to do his webcomic.
Yeah, and so,
So the Kickstarter.
Support him on Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's on right now. We have supported him. And it's a great comic. You can read all of them free online right now. But it's nice to have a signed sort of artifact in support of this guy who's doing such really interesting work.
Yeah, so read Max Over Axe if you haven't. And
link in the description. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We talked about this before, and it's been a while since we've talked about it, but the biggest thing I want to point out is it's got a lot of the energy and the joy of Calvin and Hobbes, but it's taking it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
So instead of, listen, if you're going to read it, don't want to spoil it for you, but there's a joy to it.
Yeah.
I think that, it comes across beautifully in both the stories and the art. Highly recommended. Check it out. And if you're so inclined, you've got time to support his Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there we go.
Justice
updating. We have not answered the
Okay,
question.
all right. So I want to get back to my thoughts on how important it is, right?
Yeah.
So clearly it's the most important thing. This channel would not exist without it. We did some unboxings for a while, but that petered out. And it was this part, the video gaming part, which
made this sustainable.
Is more injusticing part because there's not much in the way of other video games that got any views. Yeah. So that's been our success in terms of the audience, our ad revenue, which is not much now, but it's the fact that it's anything is entirely because of Injustice.
And Patreon support.
Yes, absolutely. So here's the thing, right? But from their point of view, they've got Injustice 2, which is, from what I understand, a bigger money maker. Injustice 1 was originally meant to be an ad for the console game, which has been superseded by Injustice 2, the console game.
Yeah.
So I think they probably know as well as anybody can that it's probably not that important to them, and it's why they're putting in so little effort. I mean, it's not like they're not putting in any effort.
Mm-hmm.
So the related question for Red Lightning was, are they going to update it? And I'm going to say it seems really unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, in the history of the Injustice game, a lot of things just happen, no warning, no announcement.
Mm-hmm.
There have been patterns of just stuff, and a lot of times you can make inferences from them because the patterns repeat, but we've also had times where things just changed abruptly. So the main pattern now is that there has not been an update since February 2019, and we're getting on to a full year since then. And that's probably the most compelling argument that there's not going to be another update.
Yeah.
Even though they are maintaining the multiplayer seasons and the challenges, and you could say, well, maybe it's all automated, and it sort of is and sort of not, because when they had the Joker movie come out, they interrupted it by sticking the Suicide Squad characters in it for the challenges, right?
There's definitely little touches of, human contact with the game every now and then, but it's really hard to tell, and it doesn't seem like they're making any sort of long-term like content for it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's been so long since the last, like I said, we're heading onto a year now, and it used to be it would average about 6, would it be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like 2 months, somewhere around 2 months. I'd have to go back to the numbers and check. It's been so long since I haven't really thought about the idea of how often it updates, but it's way past due. And I think the only way that there would be a new update is if somehow, almost impossibly, there'd be like a big uptick in income generated from the game. And I just don't see that happening anymore, because people are now getting frustrated enough that they're avoiding playing completely, and there's plenty of free-to-play players. I wonder, for the whales who play games, if there's any appeal in spending money on a game that's years old, or whether it's only for like a new game and they want to get ahead.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
I wouldn't know. I'm not.
Yeah,
a whale.
and that's another thing with the whale, right? Is that there's less of a push for that when there isn't sort of an active social element of it, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a big point, because again, so Warner Brothers, when they changed their servers and changed their site, the official forum just disappeared. I think they announced that they were gonna
migrated or something.
Yeah, and they ended up not. Like, there's not even a forum anymore.
Yeah.
So the GameFAQs forum was the first one to go. The subreddit for it is still sort of semi-active. There's a few regulars there, but there's not nearly as much interest. But it was really when the official forum went that we could notice, based on the traffic on our channel, just how much the fan base had sort of dissipated, had just sort of almost slowly disappeared.
Yeah.
Around that time.
So there we go. I think that's our answer, as unfortunate as it was. I'm glad we started out with some fun stories about school beforehand.
Well, it was sort of, I mean, it was related in terms of, I mean, it's just how important this game has been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there we go. Our next question comes from Damon 210306, and they say, any idea on which rewards in multiplayer are worth doing?
So it's an interesting way to frame the question, because I'll take the opposite tack. It's like that joke about how I'm going to screw up the joke, so let me just answer the question first, so I can make sure I get to my point. So it's probably more useful talking about which rewards are not worth doing, because I'd say most of the multiplayer rewards are worth it. Mm-hmm. And I'll say that there's maybe a couple gears that we pretty much never use. Mm-hmm. And then that would be the Batmobile, which to me is one of the worst legendary gears. Yeah. Because it's got so many abilities that are Batman specific, and the one ability that's not isn't that great, and the ones that are specific to Batman aren't that great either, because the game has moved away from using supers. And Scarecrow's Mask, because the abilities are actually, even though they're available to everybody, are kind of crappy. Mm-hmm. So here's the biggest problem with multiplayer. Not a problem, but the difficulty in saying which ones are worth it. The problem is that all the characters are worth doing, even if you don't like them, because you're going to get some joy out of playing around with them, and you might discover that there's things that you didn't expect once you've actually had a chance to play them at a higher level.
Yeah. Because you really can't know for sure until you get them.
Yeah, yeah. And the flip side is, okay, so that's for characters. But for gears, if there are gears that are not worth doing because we don't really have use for them, as collectors, we still want them. Yeah. Right? We want a complete collection, and you only need to be in the top 5% to get one copy, which is all you ever need. You don't need multiple copies. I mean, it's nice to have it to break for shards, mm-hmm. but you don't need them. And I mean, they're all pretty good. And the characters, the problem is that it takes a few seasons to collect enough to max them out. Yeah. So in some ways, there's almost too many things to do in Injustice. Yeah.
I mean, definitely there's too many things to do in Injustice, I would say.
Yeah, so the joke I was thinking of was the one where there's the captain on the boat, mm-hmm. and there's some sort of thing that on boats, I guess, in the old days, where you used to keep a log. The captain would keep a journal. The same
Captain's log, yeah.
Yeah, so the same way they'd make do a version of it on Star Trek, but they used to do that on real boats. Mm-hmm. And so the captain would put in notes saying, the first mate was drinking again today.
Yeah.
And the first mate was drinking a day, so he'd make notes each day.
Yeah.
And one day, this first mate got in and snuck into his own note and said the captain was not drinking today.
Oh, there you go.
So
okay. You told the joke, right?
Have I told that joke? Okay.
No, you told it correctly.
Oh, I can't remember if I told before, but that's the idea, right? So when Damien says which rewards in multiplayer are worth doing, which rewards are not worth doing sort of implies that the rest are, and they are. Because I think out of all the rewards, really, the Batmobile and Scarecrow's mask. Oh, in the old days, there used to be non-exclusive seasons. Mm-hmm. So there was, at one point, we would just talk about gear. Regular seasons. Yeah, they just have gear. And they'd screwed up the ranking one time. So if we ever see another season that doesn't have a multiplayer exclusive, you'll see that I think it's like the 5 or the 10% level. Mm-hmm. The reward is higher than the 1% level.
Yeah.
For the gear, but not for the power credits. Mm-hmm. So that was an exploit, technically an exploit
that we never got to do. Years ago.
So we had the notes from it, and then it just never came back because they started introducing too many multiplayer rewards that we never had a regular season again.
Mm-hmm. So there we go.
I should point out too that's the answer to the question. But if we were, because we're clearly not doing this YouTube thing right. If we were doing the YouTube thing right, like what we should be having is some sort of controversial position about how certain gears are really good and certain good gears are really crap, and then it would invite people to have like a hate really have negative comments in it and argue in the comments about how wrong we are.
I think it's really bold of you to assume that one, people are invested enough in injustice to get angry about somebody saying gears are good. Number two, that we can generate rage views that people are going to be like sharing, like, look at what this dumbass said about injustice. And that three, people are engaged enough with our videos that moment will come to pass and they'll comment and they'll be like, this is dumb, you're dumb. I don't know if people are thinking, maybe people are. But, we'll say something in a video and, people won't comment on it. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of propositions here that we would be successful if we talked about this dying game in a worse way, a less informed sense.
So what's funny, I think, about our YouTube history is that there's some things where we got really, really lucky on the timing.
Yeah. And
a lot of other things where we just screwed up the timing completely.
Yeah?
Well, so, there was a time where we had a huge number of views. And we leveraged it a little bit. We did a few things right where I was able to get some free review copies of books that I liked. We got some subscription stuff.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool. But I think in terms of the support, that back then there were people actually saying, hey, we'd like to support you and do something for you.
On Patreon.
And we just never did. And by the time we did, I think our actual moment had passed. I completely appreciate the people that are supporting us now. I'm surprised that there's many as we got. Time. But what we're talking about now is like our videos, like our weekly P&Q&C&A&T videos. We're getting a few hundred.
Oh, you're getting into a later question.
Well, it's sort of, but there were times where we'd get consistently 1,000 each week, and some of our most popular videos, if you look on our channel, we're talking like 300,000 views, right?
Yeah.
So clearly, the time to do something with the channel in a way to sort of take advantage of the notoriety, like branch out and other stuff, where we could have done it effectively, has sort of passed us by. So our timing on that has been sort of off. I don't mind it, but it's just interesting that, because the questions that's coming up, like you mentioned, has got me thinking a little bit about the history of what we've been doing.
So there we go. Our next question comes from Marcos Moran, and they ask, what's the ratio of those that watch in video versus in podcast?
So there's a couple of things that are embedded in this question that are kind of interesting to me, right? So the ratio of those that watch in video versus in podcast.
So the easiest thing that I can do is I can tell you the number of people who are watching it in podcast, and the people who are watching it on video, right? Those views are publicly available.
Right.
So our last episode, 14 plays. The one before that, 16. Then 18, 16, 10, 17, 15, 17, 17, 17, 17. And the further back you go, it jumps into the 20s, and then every once in a while it hits 30, every once in a while it gets 18. So the old enough ones, depending on whether they're slowly accumulating over time.
What are those dollar signs on
them? That was just potential to be monetized, but we never got any ad plugs to put in it. So,
okay.
But so they're getting over a dozen pretty consistently,
Right.
And depending on whether they're slowly accumulating over the course of weeks or they're just dropping off, it seems like they hop up past, like, before a certain point to, over 20.
I think
pretty consistently.
So it sounds like the podcast probably has a little bit more legs in terms of the old stuff, but what we're talking about are really small numbers.
Yeah.
So if we look
less
at
than
YouTube,
50, pretty much always, I think.
Yeah. Even the first
Yeah,
one.
always less than 50, including this is a good time if you're listening now and you haven't yet. The first ever episode that we uploaded on our podcast is an hour and 5 minutes of content that's only up there, where we just sort of wax poetic about
it's our origin
channel.
Story.
Yeah, so that's got 46 plays, closest to 50, but if you, for some reason, if you're starved for more of our content, you can go ahead and check that out. That's an extra hour and a bit of stuff that's not going up anywhere else.
So you have more expertise on the podcast because you actually set all that up. Mm-hmm. And the YouTube I have access to, so I have a few ideas about the numbers. Because the numbers are interesting. Like, more people are aware of YouTube numbers because they're so transparent and visible.
Yeah.
So you've got views and you've got time watched. And the original question was about people, right? What's the ratio of those that watch in video versus in podcast? Mm-hmm. Because our P&Q&C&A&T videos are so long, it's very likely that the number of views aren't all unique viewers.
Yeah.
Because there's only a short amount of time that it takes to trigger a view, but what we're looking at are podcasts sort of videos that are between 40 minutes and an hour.
Yeah, and podcasts are different because they're based off of downloads primarily, and when they're streams, I don't know how streams are calculated exactly, but it's closer to one. It is one person.
It feels like it, yeah. Even if they don't eventually watch it, they are downloading, so they're subscribed, right?
Yeah.
So the number of views is probably not. It's probably a multiple of the actual number of unique people that are watching.
Yeah.
And if the retention numbers are accurate, average view time hovers just below, say, 20% of the length of the video.
Which is still pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Because they are long. I appreciate that it takes a huge amount of patience to be sitting with the YouTube video. And I also recognize that that's why we were willing to go with the podcast and why people were asking for it, because it was easier to take the podcast with you than it is to take YouTube with you unless you want to pay extra money.
Yeah. And it also makes sense because anything over 30 seconds counts as a view, right?
Right.
So if you think about it, that includes the really low end of the spectrum where people watch it for like a minute, right?
Right.
So if somebody watches it for like a minute versus watching one person watching the entire thing, right? Your watch time on that on average is pretty close to the 50% mark just because of how long our videos are, right?
Right.
So it only takes a couple people watching very little time for it to really sort of lock it at sort of the most it can get being like the 50%.
Yeah.
So the fact that we get 20 is still pretty good.
Yeah, so I think if we're going to look at how many people, because in my mind, some of these people might come back and watch more of it later.
Yeah.
And I think if on average, if average out to 20, and who knows, like averages are funny things. Like it's not like we've got a median number or anything, right?
And the funny thing about that is it means that the average listener here has stopped listening, so we can say whatever we want here. True fans only.
So if I had to make a guess at how many times they'd be coming back, I'd say, I don't expect them to listen to 100%, but I think, say, at least half of the video. So that's taking like 2 or 3 views. Yeah. So if we take the number of views divided by 3 to get an estimate number of people, lately we've been getting maybe about 100 people watching these particular videos.
Yeah.
And there's probably more views. I mean, different style of videos have different views, right? The weekly recap, I think, gets more, and I think more of those are unique because that's a shorter video.
Yeah. So I guess the long and short of it is that if you look at our views on the platform, it's like less than 5% when you compare the podcast to YouTube, right? Because we're getting hundreds of views here. Like, I don't know.
Did you say 5%?
Yeah. Because when you're talking about like 20 views, right? Are we getting 400 views on the average video? I don't even...
Maybe 300?
Yeah, so then, maybe not more than less than 5%, but yeah, hovering somewhere between like 5 and 10% maybe.
So 1 in 20, 1 to 20 or 1 to 10.
Yeah.
So the YouTube still is like 10 times as much as popular.
And it's definitely always like less than 10%. I'm saying 10% to make sure that I catch it.
So, and I guess it makes sense too, because if a lot of what we're doing now is the rambling that doesn't have a huge amount to do with the game. And when you're watching YouTube, at least in the background, we've got some gameplay. Right now, the gameplay is a demonstration of how to get through Phantom Zone quickly, and also the final crystal, so you can see a sample of the kind of rewards that you might expect.
Mm-hmm. So there we go.
Yeah.
And our next and final question comes from Jim Halpert. And they say, sorry about this, just got a rant. Also, just a bit of background, I've been playing this game for at least 8 years, maybe a little more. It has been the only game, besides maybe Minecraft, which isn't even mobile, but that's beside the point, that I have always come back to enjoy and play. Very few games manage to be so entertaining, short, and long-term. Injustice truly is a great game. I haven't been playing Injustice for quite a while now, and as a result, not watching this great channel as much. I always thought that this would be the game that I would keep playing throughout my life, as strange as that sounds. The most invested I've probably been in a game. But there are some things that have really pushed me away. I think the main thing that really sucks is that every single good, interesting booster pack can only be bought with real money. The game was great when there was something to work for, but now for people such as myself at a certain phase in the game, this is pretty annoying. I have made very, very small progression the little I have played recently, because I have most of the challenge characters and a lot of online stuff, and for the past few years, what I've wanted has been in those booster packs, for example, Red Sun. It is also aggravating because I've spent years saving up credits and now I don't have anything good to spend them on. Back to talking about my phase compared to others, I see friends who decide to get the game and quickly make good progress thanks to all the challenges and game mechanics relevant to them, such as gold booster packs. And for the people who have just about everything, it doesn't matter because likely the stuff they still need is online or attainable only in some other way. I am stuck in the middle. I know there's nothing you can do, but maybe bringing this to the attention of people with a large audience, and then in brackets, you guys, can do something. Maybe we can work together to push the creators of the app to returning to the in-game credits. I sure know that if they made the change, I'd go from not playing the game to playing it all the time and telling everybody else about the game. And if nothing happens, well, thanks for being an amazing channel and giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts here.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Thank you very much. That was very complimentary, and we appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think...
This ties everything together actually really nicely.
Yeah, I think it's almost hard to bounce off that because it just, it says everything that it needs to say, right? I think this person obviously understands exactly where they're at in the game, right? Their concerns with it are very well phrased.
Right.
I think the least accurate thing that they've said
large audience
is that we have a large audience. Yeah, which is,
I knew you were going there.
Well, hey, if that's I think the only hole that I can poke in that, and that's just them being nice to us, so
That's true.
That's maybe just more my inability to take a compliment.
Yeah, I mean, it touches on all the previous questions too, right?
Yeah.
And it's a nice sort of bow to tie together. It is a great game.
Yeah.
I don't think the devs care about the same things that we do, and
that makes sense.
Well, sure. I mean, I'm not. Yeah, it's not like there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's just what it is, and I hear what Jim is a guy's name. Yeah.
But Jim Halpert is also the
Office,
straight
right?
guy from The Office. So this is not straight man, not straight guy.
Straight
right?
Man.
What's the TV?
Oh, in a comedy routine where you've got one guy who's going to be the straight.
What's the term for it? Because if you say if you're saying the wrong one, you're just saying that he's heterosexual, which is I think everybody in The Office.
I think.
Oh no, not Oscar. Sorry.
Yeah, not Oscar.
Yeah, almost everybody.
You've erased Oscar.
I didn't erase Oscar. I just didn't
temporarily.
Remember. Which is hard because Michael's always just joking about how he's gay. Anyways,
so no, it is a straight man in a routine.
Straight man.
Yeah,
okay.
Straight man.
Yeah, because if you use the wrong term, you're not saying the same.
You're not
thing.
saying what you think you're saying.
Yeah.
So I don't think they care the same way because the mechanics have changed so much since the beginning, right? Remember when challenges were like for 3 weeks?
Yeah.
And there'd be gaps.
It was basically a month-long
challenges.
cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's changed actually, so that if anything, it's easier in some ways for newer players to progress because challenge characters are much more accessible.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think the game probably doesn't care nearly as much, or maybe cares in a different way, in a way that's not nearly as useful by giving us things to strive for long term, such as some of the multiplayer characters and some of the metal characters. But I think the metal characters is broken in a way because it's so hard to do that the amount of time that it takes you to get them is prohibitive, and by the time you get anywhere, the game probably will be long dead. I mean, we're seeing it now, right? It's been, like we said earlier, almost a year.
Yeah.
And if it's going to take you 2 or 3 years to max out your metal characters, by the time you've lost interest in it, I think you won't be even close enough to get there if you're going to play it legitimately.
Yeah, and if we continue moving at this trajectory, in not too long, all of our content will either be non-Injustice related or talking about how Injustice is dying.
Well, it's true. I mean, a lot of the questions are, hey...
what's up with Injustice?
What's up with Injustice?
Yeah.
Is it dead? I mean, I've seen that not only on our channel, but in the subreddit, too, on Injustice.
That's the discussion around this game now. We're circling the storm drain.
And I guess this is probably a good time to point out, too, like, we are not we're still in it, but in the next little bit, it might be disrupted a little bit because I will be making a trip in. But what we learned from last year when you were in school
is that we can do asynchronous.
Yeah, we can do it at a distance, and hopefully that means if I'm willing to travel with the computer, and I'm still sort of torn about that because I've heard horror stories about what happens in airplanes and stuff.
Oh, yeah. So we'll see.
But if I bring the good computer, we could probably still keep something up. The recaps, I think, will be the easiest, but these Q&A things, which I find just a lot more enjoyable in person.
You might be able to record it on your phone and just send me the audio file for the recap.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, we'll see what happens.
Have to figure it out.
We'll try to maintain some sort of content. This is going to be sometime in February where we're going to be separated by a huge distance. I mean, really halfway around the world. But I think we could probably work something out, even if it means that we, instead of doing a P&Q&C&A&T where we're actually having conversation, we could do record ahead of time some gameplay videos.
Yeah, maybe. So, yeah, look forward to that, I guess, or stay tuned for that. Maybe not look forward, but
yeah.
There we go. And that's our last question. So, to finish up, I'd like to give a shout out to Eliza, plant-based Caton. She eats the food that my food eats. This shout out has been brought to you by a late Christmas gift of a pair of pants, which I forgot to bring home with me last week.
All right, she gave you a pair of pants?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
H&M shopping. Well, we shopped for a pair of pants.
Oh, and so, okay. That's kind of
They're nice
cool.
pants. I'll show you them when I bring them home, which I have not done. But also...
I'm liking this, Eliza. When am I going to get to meet her?
I don't know. Why not? At some point in the future. All you know is that she's a vegetarian and has given me pants and vegetarian chicken nuggets. But, I mean... Okay.
This is why it's interesting. All right, anyway, sorry.
A huge thank you to our supporters.
Our online supporters.
Our Patreon supporters. Consul Peasant and Edwoon, who are supporting us at the highest last word tier. Mohammed Albshaiti at the Your Message Here tier. Shawn, Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, and Michael DeVries, who support us on the credited level. And Chris Wolf at the gratitude level. Thanks so much also for watching, and we'll see you all next time.
Komoda.